The Sunday afternoon sun filtered through my mother's dining room windows. As I sat at the far end of the table, nursing a glass of iced tea. 23 relatives packed the house: aunts, uncles, cousins, my mother's bridge club friends, who'd become honorary family over the years. The noise level suggested celebration, which seemed odd for a regular Sunday dinner. My stepfather, Gregory, stood at the head of the table, his face flushed with what I recognized as triumph. He'd been married to my mother for 6 years now, ever since my father passed away from a sudden heart attack. Gregory was a real estate developer, always talking about maximizing assets and leveraging opportunities. "I have an announcement," Gregory said, tapping his wine glass with a fork. The chatter died down. "As many of you know, Victoria here has been sitting on a valuable piece of real estate for years. That beach house in Malibu, just sitting empty, collecting dust." My jaw tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. I took another sip of tea. "Well, I'm pleased to report that yesterday, at a private auction, that property sold to the highest bidder. Final price $2.4 million. The room erupted. My mother's sister Diane squealed and rushed to hug Gregory. My cousin Marcus pumped his fist in the air. Mom herself beamed from her seat beside Gregory, reaching up to squeeze his hand. "Gregory, that's wonderful," Diane gushed. "What brilliant business sense. About time someone in this family made smart financial decisions," my Uncle Robert added, shooting a pointed look in my direction. I set down my glass carefully and pulled my phone from my purse, scrolling through my emails with deliberate calm. "The property was just wasting away," Gregory continued, warming to his audience. "Victoria inherited it from her father, but she's never maintained it properly. The place needed work, updates. I had it appraised last month. The structure was deteriorating. Selling now was the smart move before it lost more value." "What are you going to do with the money?" someone asked. Gregory's smile widened. "Well, your mother and I have been discussing that. We're thinking of purchasing a villa in Tuscany, something we can all enjoy as a family." More applause. More congratulations. I opened my email and found the message I was looking for, sent just 40 minutes ago. The subject line read, "Urgent fraudulent property transaction, injunction filed." "Victoria, honey," my mother said, her voice carrying that particular tone of forced patience she'd perfected over the years. "I know you're upset, but this really is for the best. You never used that beach house. Your father would want the family to benefit from it." I looked up at her. She had my father's wedding ring on a chain around her neck, a detail that might have seemed touching if she hadn't removed it whenever Gregory's business associates visited. "Did I say I was upset?" I asked quietly. "You're sitting there sulking," Gregory interjected. "Look, Victoria, I understand you have sentimental attachment, but sentiment doesn't pay property taxes. Sentiment doesn't handle maintenance costs. The place was becoming a liability." "When did you schedule the auction?" I asked. "Last week. Private sale, very exclusive. Real estate investment firm out of Beverly Hills. They specialize in coastal properties." Gregory pulled out his own phone, scrolling. "Already have the deposit. 480,000, 20% down. Very standard." "And you've spent it already?" I asked. Gregory's eyes narrowed slightly. "I've made commitments, yes. The Tuscany property requires a deposit. Plus your mother deserved a little shopping spree. She found a beautiful bracelet at Cartier." Mom held up her wrist, showing off diamonds that caught the light. The table cooed appreciatively. "The closing is scheduled for Friday," Gregory continued. "Everything's already in motion. Clean sale, no complications." I nodded slowly and returned my attention to my phone. I opened my text messages and found the thread with my father's estate attorney Martin Hodges. His most recent message, sent 20 minutes ago, read, "Trust administrator en route to your location. Bank's legal team has filed emergency injunction. Auction house contacted." "This is fraud, Victoria. Criminal fraud." I typed back. "Understood." I'm at Mom's house. Family gathering. The response came immediately. "Perfect. Mrs. Patterson wants to handle this in person. She'll be there in 10 minutes. I'm on my way with the police." I pocketed my phone and picked up my iced tea again. "Victoria, are you even listening?" Mom asked, exasperation creeping into her voice. "I'm listening," I said. "Gregory sold the Malibu beach house at auction yesterday for $2.4 million. He's already spent the deposit on a villa in Tuscany and jewelry. Closing is Friday." "Well, at least you were paying attention," Gregory muttered. My cousin Sarah, who'd always been competitive with me since childhood, leaned forward. You know, Vicky, maybe this is good for you. You've been coasting on your dad's money for too long. Maybe now you'll actually get a real job. I have a job, I said. Working at that little nonprofit. Sarah laughed. Please, you make what, 40,000 a year? That's adorable. 38,000, I corrected. I'm an environmental policy researcher. Exactly, Gregory said, as if I'd proven his point. You're living like a college student while sitting on millions in real estate. It's irresponsible. Your father would be disappointed. That one stung, but I'd learned not to rise to the bait. My father had taught me something Gregory would never understand. Patience was a form of power. Did you handle the title transfer yourself? I asked Gregory. Of course not. I had my attorney manage everything. Harold Bixby, top real estate lawyer in Century City. Everything's completely legal and above board. And the auction house. Prestige Properties International. Very reputable firm. I nodded. And you verified ownership before listing the property. Gregory's expression shifted slightly, just a flicker of irritation. Victoria, I've been managing your mother's affairs for 6 years. I know which assets belong to the family. The family, I repeated softly. Yes, the family. Your mother and I are married. Community property state. What's hers is mine. What's mine is hers. That includes assets inherited during the marriage. My uncle Robert raised his glass to Gregory for finally bringing some financial sense to this family. They all drank. I didn't. The doorbell rang. I'll get it, I said, standing. Sit down, Victoria, Mom said. You're being rude. We're not finished with dinner. I'm expecting someone, I said, already moving toward the front door. I opened it to find a woman in her early 60s, dressed in an immaculate navy suit, carrying a leather briefcase. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her expression was all business. Victoria Brennan, she asked. Yes, Mrs. Patterson, Sandra Patterson, Trust Administrator for Pacific Coast Bank and Trust. May I come in, please? I led her into the dining room. The conversation died the moment she appeared. Something about her bearing, the way she carried herself with absolute authority, commanded immediate attention. I'm sorry to interrupt your dinner, Mrs. Patterson said, her voice crisp and professional. But I'm here regarding a very urgent matter concerning property located at 47825 Pacific Coast Highway, Malibu, California. Gregory stood up slowly. Who are you? Sandra Patterson, Trust Administrator for Pacific Coast Bank and Trust. And you are? Gregory Morrison. What's this about? Mrs. Patterson opened her briefcase and removed a folder. Mr. Morrison, are you aware that you conducted an auction sale yesterday on the property I mentioned? I sold a beach house. Yes, my stepdaughter's inherited property. What business is that of yours? I'm afraid it's very much my business, Mr. Morrison. That property is held in an irrevocable trust established by the late Dr. Michael Brennan in 2012. Pacific Coast Bank and Trust is the trustee. Victoria Brennan is the sole beneficiary. The room went silent. Gregory's face reddened. That's ridiculous. The property is part of my wife's estate. No, Mr. Morrison, it is not. Mrs. Patterson pulled out a document and placed it on the table. This is a certified copy of the Michael Brennan Irrevocable Trust. The beach house, along with several other properties and assets, was placed in trust specifically to protect Victoria's inheritance. The trust cannot be dissolved, modified, or accessed by anyone other than the named beneficiary, Victoria Brennan. Mom stood up, her face pale. That can't be right. Michael never mentioned a trust. According to our records, Mrs. Morrison, Dr. Brennan established this trust 6 months before his death. He was quite explicit in his instructions. The assets were to be protected from any claims, including potential claims from future spouses or creditors. This is a misunderstanding, Gregory said, but his voice had lost its confidence. I have documentation. You have forged documentation, Mr. Morrison. Mrs. Patterson's tone went ice cold. At 3:15 this afternoon, Pacific Coast Bank and Trust filed an emergency injunction with the Superior Court, halting the sale of the property. At 3:30, we notified Prestige Properties International that their auction was fraudulent. At 3:45, we contacted the buyer's attorneys. Gregory sat down heavily. Furthermore, Mrs. Patterson continued, we've been in contact with the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. Fraudulent sale of property is a serious crime in California, Mr. Morrison. Now wait just a minute. Uncle Robert interjected. Gregory is family. He made an honest mistake. An honest mistake. Mrs. Patterson turned to him. Mr. Morrison forged Victoria Brennan's signature on transfer documents. He created false ownership papers. He represented himself as having power of attorney over trust assets. These aren't mistakes, sir. These are felonies. The doorbell rang again. This time I didn't need permission to answer it. I walked to the door and let in Martin Hodges, my father's attorney, accompanied by 2 police officers. Martin was 72, with white hair and kind eyes that could turn sharp when needed. Right now they were very sharp indeed. Martin, I said quietly. Victoria. He patted my shoulder gently. You okay? I'm fine. We returned to the dining room, where the 2 police officers immediately drew everyone's attention. Officers, Gregory said, trying to sound authoritative. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. The older officer, whose nameplate read, Detective Barnes, pulled out a notebook. Gregory Morrison. Yes, Mr. Morrison. I'm Detective Barnes, and this is Officer Hernandez. We're here regarding allegations of property fraud, forgery and theft by false pretenses. Mom grabbed Gregory's arm. This is insane. Gregory, tell them, Mrs. Morrison. Martin Hodges said gently. I suggest you allow your husband to speak with his attorney before saying anything else. You're supposed to be Victoria's attorney, not Gregory's, Mom said accusingly. I am Victoria's attorney. I was also your late husband's attorney, and I'm the one who helped Michael establish the trust that your current husband attempted to violate. Sarah spoke up from her seat, her voice uncertain now. But Victoria inherited that house. Everybody knows that. Victoria inherited the use and benefit of that house, Martin explained. But the property itself is held in trust. Dr. Brennan was very specific about this. He wanted to ensure that his daughter's inheritance would be protected from anyone who might try to take advantage of her, including, he paused, meaningfully, future family members. Diane, my mother's sister, looked confused. Why would Michael do that? He trusted Margaret. Dr. Brennan trusted his wife, Martin agreed. But he was also a careful man. He'd seen too many cases where widows were manipulated by new partners. The trust wasn't about distrust, it was about protection. Mrs. Patterson placed another document on the table. This is the transaction record from Prestige Properties International. Mr. Morrison listed himself as the property owner. He provided what appeared to be legitimate title documents. However, when Prestige Properties attempted to file the title transfer this afternoon, the county recorder's office flagged the documents as fraudulent. That's when they contacted us. I want to see my lawyer, Gregory said suddenly. That's your right, Detective Barnes replied. But I need to inform you that we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of real estate fraud, forgery and grand theft. Mom gasped. Arrest? You can't arrest him, ma'am. He sold property he didn't own for $2.4 million. That's not a civil matter, that's a crime. The deposit, I said quietly. Gregory said he received $480,000 as a deposit. Mrs. Patterson nodded. The buyers transferred that amount to an account, Mr. Morrison established. According to our investigation, he's already withdrawn $350,000. For the Tuscany villa, I said, and the Cartier bracelet. Mom clutched at her wrist, where the diamond bracelet suddenly seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. Officer Hernandez stepped forward with handcuffs. Mr. Morrison, please stand up. This is ridiculous, Gregory sputtered. I'm a respected businessman. I've done nothing wrong. I was acting in the family's best interest. You were stealing from your stepdaughter, Martin said flatly. You forged her signature, created false documents, and attempted to sell property that didn't belong to you. The fact that you spent the proceeds makes it worse, not better. As Officer Hernandez recited Miranda rights, the room remained frozen in shocked silence. My cousins, my aunts and uncles, my mother's friends, all of them had been applauding just minutes ago. Mom looked at me, her eyes filling with tears. Victoria, please, tell them there's been a mistake. Tell them to stop. I met her gaze steadily. There has been a mistake, Mom. Gregory made it when he assumed he could steal my inheritance. Steal? He's your stepfather. He was trying to help the family. He was trying to help himself, I corrected. And you let him because it was easier than standing up for me. The officers led Gregory toward the door. He twisted around, his face contorted with anger now instead of fear. You ungrateful little, this is your fault. If you'd just been reasonable, if you just shared what you inherited. Mr. Morrison, Detective Barnes said firmly, I'd stop talking if I were you. Martin Hodges cleared his throat. Mrs. Patterson, what's the status of the auction deposit? The bank has frozen the account, she replied. However, Mr. Morrison has already withdrawn $350,000. Only $130,000 remains. He spent $350,000 in less than 24 hours. Diane asked, stunned. The Tuscany property required a €200,000 deposit, Mrs. Patterson said, consulting her notes. That's approximately $220,000. The Cartier bracelet was $68,000. Various other purchases amount to roughly $60,000 more. Mom's face went white. €200,000. Gregory, you said the deposit was $50,000, but Gregory was already being escorted out the front door. Martin turned to Mom. Margaret, the bracelet, and any other items Gregory purchased with the fraudulent funds will need to be surrendered as evidence. The DA's office will be in touch. I didn't know, Mom whispered. I swear I didn't know it was illegal. You didn't ask, I said quietly. You didn't ask how Gregory suddenly had the authority to sell my property. You didn't ask to see the paperwork. You just assumed he had the right, because you wanted him to. Sarah stood up abruptly. This is so typical of you, Victoria, always playing the victim. Your dad left you money, and you act like it makes you special. Sarah Martin interrupted, his voice sharp. I'd be very careful what you say right now. Your cousin has been remarkably patient during what amounts to theft and fraud by her own family members. What's that supposed to mean? Uncle Robert demanded. It means, Mrs. Patterson said, that every person in this room congratulated Mr. Morrison for stealing from Victoria. Every person in this room celebrated what you all knew was her inherited property being sold without her consent. And several of you, she glanced at Sarah, actively encouraged the idea that Victoria didn't deserve what her father left her. The silence was deafening. Martin pulled out his own folder. The Michael Brennan Irrevocable Trust contains not just the Malibu Beach house, but 4 other properties, a portfolio of investments currently valued at approximately $8 million, and the rights to 3 patents Dr. Brennan developed during his career in biomedical engineering. The trust generates approximately $450,000 in annual income. I watched the realization dawn on their faces. My little nonprofit job suddenly made more sense. I didn't need money. I worked there because I believed in the cause. Victoria receives quarterly distributions from the trust, Martin continued. She also has the option to access principal for approved expenses like education, medical care, or property maintenance. What she doesn't have, what she legally cannot have, is someone else selling trust assets without her explicit written consent and approval from the trust administrator. Mom sank into her chair. $450,000 a year, give or take, Martin confirmed. Victoria's been quite modest about her financial situation. Diane looked at me with something like awe. Why didn't you ever say anything? Because my father taught me that wealth doesn't define worth, I said. He also taught me that people's true character shows when they think you have nothing. Today proved he was right. Marcus, who'd pumped his fist in celebration earlier, had the grace to look ashamed. Victoria, we didn't know. You didn't ask, I repeated. None of you asked if the sale was legal. You just assumed Gregory had the right to take what was mine. Mrs. Patterson began gathering her documents. Miss Brennan, we'll need you to come to the bank tomorrow to review the trust documents and discuss next steps. The property is secure, the injunction is in place, but we'll need to coordinate with the district attorney's office regarding the criminal case. Of course, I said. Martin added, I've already contacted Prestige Properties. They're cooperating fully. The buyers are understandably upset, but they'll get their deposit back once the funds are recovered. The real issue is the money Gregory spent. Can we get it back? I asked. The Tuscany sellers will have to return their deposit. The bracelet can be recovered and sold. The other purchases, Martin shrugged. We'll do our best, but realistically, you may not recover all of it. That's okay, I said. I don't want the money, I just want the property protected. Mom stood up suddenly. You don't want the money, Victoria, that's almost $400,000. I know, Mom, but it was never about the money. It was about respecting Dad's wishes. It was about you choosing to believe your husband over your daughter. I didn't choose, you did, I said firmly. Every time Gregory talked about selling the beach house, you agreed with him. Every time he called me irresponsible or entitled, you nodded. You wore Dad's ring around your neck, but you ignored everything he actually valued. Tears streamed down her face. He was my husband too, Victoria. He was, and he protected your future by making sure I'd be taken care of. The trust includes provisions for your medical care if you ever need it. Did you know that? Dad made sure you'd never be a burden to me, or dependent on anyone else. Mom's hand went to the chain around her neck. But you let Gregory convince you that protecting me was somehow hurting you. And now Gregory's going to jail for fraud. The weight of that statement settled over the room. Detective Barnes returned from securing Gregory in the patrol car. Miss Brennan, we'll need a formal statement from you. Tomorrow morning. That works. Come to the station around 9. He nodded to Martin. Mr. Hodges, detective. As the police left, the family gathering dissolved. People made excuses, grabbed their coats, avoided eye contact. Within 10 minutes only Mom, Diane and I remained. Diane hugged her sister. Margaret, I'm so sorry. I had no idea Gregory would. I mean, we all thought. It's fine, Mom said numbly. Just go, Diane. Please. After Diane left, Mom and I stood in the dining room, surrounded by half-eaten food and abandoned wine glasses. What happens now? Mom asked. Now Gregory faces criminal charges. He'll probably take a plea deal. The evidence is overwhelming. You'll need to get your own attorney, someone who can protect you from being implicated. I really didn't know, Victoria. I believe you, I said, but you should have asked. You should have questioned why he could suddenly sell property that Dad specifically left to me. I thought. She stopped, laughed bitterly. I thought he was taking care of things, taking care of us. He was taking care of himself. Mom removed the Cartier bracelet, setting it on the table like it burned her skin. The police will want this. Yes. Will you ever forgive me? I looked at my mother, really looked at her. She'd aged in the past 6 years, lines deepening around her eyes and mouth. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. I don't know, Mom. Right now I'm just tired. My phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Patterson. Title search complete. Property secure. Auction officially voided. Buyer's attorneys satisfied. Well done staying calm. I showed the message to Mom. Your father would be proud of you, she whispered. He prepared me for this, I said. Not specifically this, but he taught me to be patient, to trust that truth wins eventually, to not react emotionally when people underestimate you. He was a good man, he was, and he loved you, Mom. That's why the trust has provisions for you, even knowing you might remarry, even knowing someone might try to take advantage. He still made sure you'd be protected. Fresh tears fell. I'm such a fool. You're human. You wanted companionship after losing Dad. There's nothing wrong with that. I chose the wrong person. You did. We stood in silence for a moment. The beach house, Mom said suddenly. Do you actually use it? Every month, I said. I go there to work on research projects. The quiet helps me focus. I also let a marine biology professor from UCLA use it for student field work. I didn't know that. You never asked. Mom flinched but nodded. What you said earlier about my medical care, did Michael really include that in the trust? He did. If you ever need long-term care, the trust will cover it. You'll never have to worry about being a burden or depleting your savings. Why would he do that? Because he loved you. And because he knew that taking care of you properly meant making sure I had the resources to help without sacrificing my own future. Mom picked up the bracelet again, turning it over in her hands. The diamonds caught the light, beautiful and worthless at the same time. I'll need to testify against Gregory, won't I? Probably. But you weren't involved in the fraud itself. Your testimony would be about what Gregory told you, what he led you to believe. He told me the property was jointly owned, that when we married everything became community property. California is a community property state for assets acquired during marriage, I explained. But my inheritance was before you married Gregory, and even if it hadn't been, the trust supersedes community property laws. That's the whole point of an irrevocable trust. I should have known. I should have consulted my own lawyer. Yes, I agreed. You should have. My phone rang. Martin Hodges. Excuse me, Mom, I answered. Martin, Victoria, wanted to give you an update. I just spoke with the Tuscany property owners. They're returning the deposit minus a small cancellation fee, about €5,000. The Cartier bracelet can be returned for full credit. And I've frozen Gregory's other accounts. We should recover most of the money. That's good news. There's more. Prestige Properties is terrified of being sued for facilitating fraud. They've agreed to pay all your legal fees as part of the settlement. They should have caught the forged documents. I don't want to bankrupt them, Martin. You won't. They have insurance for exactly this situation. But their negligence made this mess possible. Okay, thank you. One more thing. The patents your father developed. 2 pharmaceutical companies have been asking about licensing them. It could mean significant additional income for the trust. Let's talk about that tomorrow. I'm exhausted. Of course. See you at 9 at the police station. I hung up and found Mom watching me with an unreadable expression. More good news, she asked. Most of the money will be recovered. That's good. She paused. Victoria, I know I don't have the right to ask, but what happens to us? To our relationship? I considered the question carefully. I don't know, Mom. Right now I feel betrayed. Not just by Gregory, but by you. You're my mother. You should have protected me, or at the very least not celebrated while someone stole from me. I know. But I continued, you're also the only parent I have left, and Dad would want me to leave the door open for reconciliation, so I'm not cutting you off. But I need time, and I need to see real change. What kind of change? I need you to get your own attorney. Someone who represents you, not Gregory. I need you to take control of your own finances, understand what you own and what you don't. And I need you to acknowledge that you let your husband convince you to dismiss me as entitled and ungrateful when all I ever did was honor Dad's wishes. Mom nodded slowly. I can do that. I will do that. Then we'll see. But Mom, if you stay with Gregory after this, we're done. I won't have a relationship with someone who chooses a criminal over their own daughter. I won't. Mom said quickly. I'm filing for divorce. Tomorrow. Good. I picked up my purse and headed for the door. Victoria, Mom called. I turned. Your father really did prepare you for this, didn't he? The trust, the attorney, teaching you to stay calm. He knew something like this might happen. Not this specifically. But he knew that money changes people. He knew that I'd need protection, not just financial but legal. He wanted me to have advocates, resources, power. He gave you all of that. He did. And I won't dishonor his gift by letting anyone take it from me. I left my mother standing in her dining room, surrounded by the wreckage of her Sunday celebration. As I drove home, my phone continued buzzing with messages. Mrs. Patterson sending additional documentation. Martin coordinating tomorrow's schedule. Even a call from Prestige Properties' legal team wanting to apologize personally. But I ignored them all and instead opened my photos, scrolling to a picture of my father and me at the Malibu beach house. We were standing on the deck, ocean behind us, both laughing at something outside the frame. He'd taken me to that house the week he established the trust. This is yours, Tori, he'd said. No matter what happens, this place is protected. If anything ever happens to me, if your mother remarries, if someone tries to take advantage, you'll have resources. You'll have advocates. You'll have power. Nothing's going to happen to you, Dad, I'd said. 16 and immortal. I hope not. But hope isn't a plan. A trust is a plan. Martin Hodges is a plan. Teaching you to be patient and smart and strong. That's a plan. You think someone would try to steal from me? I think people do desperate, foolish things when they see money they think they can access. I'm making sure that when they try, and someone will try, you'll be protected. I'd hugged him then, not fully understanding, but trusting him completely. Now, 7 years later, I understood perfectly. Tomorrow I'd go to the police station and give my formal statement. I'd meet with Mrs. Patterson and review trust documents. I'd coordinate with Martin about pressing charges and recovering the stolen funds. But tonight, I'd go home to my small apartment, make tea, and work on my environmental research project, the one that paid me $38,000 a year because the work mattered more than the money. My father had protected my inheritance, yes, but more importantly, he'd taught me that who you are matters more than what you have. That patience is power, that staying calm, while others panic, is a kind of strength. Gregory was in custody facing multiple felonies. Mom was facing divorce and the destruction of her social circle. The family members who'd celebrated my loss were facing their own shame and complicity. And I was exactly where I'd always been, protected, prepared, and secure in the knowledge that my father's love extended beyond his death. The trust would endure, the beach house would remain mine, and the lesson would be clear. underestimate the quiet one at your own peril. I pulled into my apartment parking lot and sat for a moment, engine cooling, phone silent. Then I texted Martin one more message. Thank you for honoring Dad's trust, in every sense of the word. His reply came immediately. That's what he prepared me for. Sleep well, Victoria. Tomorrow we make sure justice is served. I smiled and headed inside. Justice wasn't just coming, it was already here.